Hello, everyone. This is Carol Dimitrov with NCGR Las Vegas Stargazers, and we are thrilled to have Gemini Brett with us. Most of you know Gemini, but he is going to be talking about astronomy, sacred astronomy for Astrologers 101. So, astrology is so much more than some symbolic language alone. Astrology is the poetic breath of nature. And when we renature our astrology by reconnecting to the living sky, we remember the roots of the rules and the proofs of the astrological equations we use. We'll start with the Earth astrology of your big three, the sun, moon, ascendant, and then tune into other cosmic keys like seasons of the day and temperament of the lunar phase that will help you keep your astrology grounded in the soil beneath your feet. And a little bit about Gemini Brett. First of all, he is very active in the Sacramento chapter, and he'll be talking a little bit towards the end about a lot of things that he's doing and what he's up to. His terrestrial translations of the celestial conversations expressed through the ancient arts of sacred geometry, musical harmony, embodied astronomy, and number magic activate seasoned sages as much as they initiate students new to the cosmic curriculum. He is a world-renowned astrologer, shamanic storyteller, and inspiring educator, best known for his devotion to connecting astrologers with the sacred astronomy of the living sky. Brett's passion, dedication, and innovation were recently honored by the Organization for Professional Astrology, who presented him with the 2020 Orion Award for outstanding contribution to astrology. And you can use that link on your mailing to go directly to his website, geminibrett.com. And I'm going to mute myself, Brett, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Carol. Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm active in the Bay Area chapter of NCGR where I'm the president, but I was just recently at the Sacramento chapter. We did a long eclipse workshop followed by some night sky training just a few nights ago, and it was their first in-person meetup since all the crazy, which was cool. We haven't done any of that at the Bay Area chapter yet. We've gone all online and like expanded our membership to well outside of the Bay. We're actually going to have Michael Luton up here in June, so we'll have our first in-person thing then. I'm not sure if I'll be in person though, because we're expecting a baby in June. And one thing I've been like planning on is like, how am I going to record the sky at my baby's birth? Like, what kind of things will I do to really honor like how the earth and the heavens set up when she comes in? So Carol, it was really nice to hear you read what I said I was going to talk about so I can know what I should get to, because oftentimes I'll bring like 1,000 slides. Some of you who are familiar with my work will know that. I'm not going to do that today. I actually want to try to get out of like that pace and more grounded and slow and talk about Earthstrology a bit. So first I want to share a recent experience, which wasn't initially one of pace at all. So I should just say on the left of the screen, and this is, I was just tripping on this. This is fun. My partner Scorpiana made this logo for me, the School of Earthstrology, and she chose this picture of the Milky Way and the snowy mountains. But I'm guessing she didn't know that she also chose an image of Antares. So if you know your stars, let me trace the scorpion for you here, which is like this. The stinger of the scorpion points to the galactic center, which is here. So anyway, anytime you search Milky Way, you get a galactic center shot because it's just the most interesting. And I'm guessing this is Jupiter, who I'm Gemini rising, so I was born with Sagittarius setting, obviously. Antares is my setting star, a place, the descendant that we associate with partners, right? Sagittarius said to be governed by Jupiter. So my partner created a piece of art for me that actually has my like partnership star and the governor of the sign right there. You know what I mean? And it's these things that happen, right? Which help us just love this craft, this mystery, or this language of the birds, as some have called it over time. And so I wanted to share this image of heron on the right. It's a great blue heron. Let me show more of that image. This was on equinox. And we actually here in the Bay Area where I live, it would have been basically the same in Vegas this year. The sun moved into tropical Aries for equinox, like right at sunset. And hopefully you've all experienced, but maybe not. I know I didn't know about this until later in my life, that the sun sets on a different place on the horizon throughout the course of the year, right? And it's only at equinox time when the sun sets due west. It's only at equinox time, whether Aries equinox, which is the east equinox, or Libra equinox, the west equinox, when the sun rises due east and sets due west, right? So it's a really wonderful time to get outside and see like where your east and west are if you have views of the horizon, or even if not, you know what I mean? Like, when does the equinox sun finally climb on top of that house that's blocking your view of the horizon? Or sorry, that casino. I know how it is in Vegas. I grew up there. You know, and really like starting to align not only to like the cardinal directions, and there's great techniques for doing that, and I think we'll speak about that some today, but also to align to like your own experience of the directional reality, right? So anyway, the night before this photo of the heron that you see, I really got the first clear evening for a while, and we just got to see the sun set perfectly west, which was nice because one of the ways that I'm keeping time, that I'm keeping the days, is just watching the sun dance from its southern extreme, which is the Tropic of Capricorn, to its northern extreme, which is the Tropic of Cancer, right? Fun fact, in this house, we have a boy who was born in July, Cancer sun, Cancer lots of stuff. And I have to go into his room to see the sunset when it's in Cancer. There's a bunch of rooms where I can see the sun most of the year. Like, we're really blessed here. I'm certainly not in a sky that's void of light pollution. Oakland's just down the way, and San Francisco's across the bay. But I do get to see the sunset every day of the year, and clouds allowing, and I get to see a lot of moon sets, and it's really helping me kind of work the calendar, like the horizon calendar, like, you know, we've done for so long. When you engage in these ancient practices, some of those old, like, I don't know, ancestral memories, maybe it's past life, who am I to say, but it kind of like awakens in you, do you know what I mean? And you just feel that kind of ancient thing. So the other bit is we only have one window that faces eastish. It actually faces southeast. We don't have much of an eastern view here, and there's houses kind of blocking our view there. But Anna, my partner, and I were both born in Scorpio season. My son is the first degree of Scorpio, and hers at like 11. And it's only at our time of the year when you can actually see the sun between the houses. It's like our own little personal Stonehenge. Actually, there's 2 times of the year. So here's a little quiz for y'all. We'll be doing some quizzes along the way. Feel free to play if you'd like. If I can see the sun there, and I'm going to open the chat. If I can see the sun there when it's at like the 1st degree, or let me say 5 degrees Scorpio, what's the other time of the year when the sun would rise between those houses? Does anyone know that? All right, I guess I'll be the one to answer my own question. So Phelan, close, I like what you're up to there. But you gave me the contra antisha, and we want the antisha. So let me actually stop my screen share so I can like wave my arm around, okay? Yeah, I mean, I have to look east to do this. Well, no, we'll just say this is east for a second, okay? So the sun will go all the way north in Cancer, and then it will come through the equinox in Libra, and it will go all the way south, right, in Capricorn's where it turns around. So just this every year. And by the way, what the sun does in a year, the moon does in a month. Yeah, and the ascendant does every day, which, by the way, is why one of the old Greek words for the ascendant is iakos or oios. It means the rudder. Every day the ascendant, descendant axis, they rudder against the cardinal directions, east and west. And when Cancer rises, or Gemini, we're at our northern extreme. Gemini takes us to our extreme with the who, what, why wins, you know, and Cancer's like, okay, like, go back home, you weird wandering child. And then Sagittarius takes us to our southern extreme, and Capricorn's like, back to the tribe. You have responsibility. Do you see how that works? So and I have images for this, but I'd rather you just feel it or see it in your mind. Like, let's just say right now, the sun's just rising east, right? Aries time. And this, by the way, doesn't work in a sidereal zodiac, doesn't work in a constellational zodiac. There's no room for the 13th sign in this. This is the Earth zodiac. This is the tropical zodiac, which is all about the tropics. Tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, named for Greek tropikos, which means turn around. And the sun turns around when? At solstice time, which means the sun stops, right? Stops doing what? Stops moving south, starts moving north, right? By the way, you can see this in the Cancer glyph. The sun goes 6 months north, 6 months south. Cancer, which we say is ruled by the moon, right? Well, the moon, 2 weeks north, 2 weeks south, you know, till she gets to her extremes, which are the tropics, Cancer and Capricorn. All right, anyway, so when the sun is in Scorpio, like let's go here, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, it's on the way to the southern extreme, the Tropic of Capricorn. And then we come back from there, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So Scorpio and Aquarius are in the same place in the horizons. It's just one is going south, Scorpio, and one's coming back from the south, right? So of course, in the northern hemisphere experience, Scorpio, we're falling towards the darkest night, longest night, and Aquarius, we're coming back from it, yeah? In many calendars, well, in some ancient calendars and some current calendars, spring actually begins with the sun in the middle of Aquarius. And the equinox is the middle of spring, which will last until Beltane, right? Until the sun's in the middle of Taurus, and then we're in summer. And that turnaround point of solstice is midsummer, like in Shakespeare. All right, so yeah, I didn't really know this about our house entirely, but it's pretty fun that the Scorpio sun people can only see the sunrise like twice a year, and once is on our birthdays, and that we have to go into the Cancer kids' room to watch Cancer sunsets. Gemini too. All right, so speaking of Gemini, in the language of the birds, this guy. So I watched the equinox sunset, took a little time lapse of the stars I first see. Because one of the things that you'll learn is while we can never know the stars that the sun is aligned to by looking, we'll go blind trying, right? This is why the original zodiacs were lunar, because we can actually watch the moon swim through the stars, yeah? That a way to know where the sun is to either see the last stars on the horizon before sunrise, right? So those are called the heliacal rising stars, or to look for the first stars in like around the western horizon that appear to you after the sun sets, the heliacally setting stars. That's where the sun will go next. The issue is that looks good on paper, but it's not like stars are all the same brightness or the same distance from the sun's track, the ecliptic. Or especially, it's not true that signs rise in the same way and set in the same way. And I'm getting a little bit, I don't know if ahead of myself is the right thing to say, but probably beyond the scope of our jam today. So speaking of jamming, the next day I finished some readings and I hopped in the new minivan because I'm getting ready for the baby girl. And I like cruised down to this place that you're looking at here, which is in Berkeley, California. at the marina. So you're looking, as you can see, at a little bit of the Golden Gate Bridge across the way where it touches into Marin. Right there is this beautiful rainbow tunnel that's now named Robin Williams Tunnel, bless his soul. And I was sprinting because there's this awesome like stone circle at this park that keeps the equinoxes and solstices, and it has what's called a meridian calendar. And yeah, maybe I'll bring up some pictures of that because let me find one, because like the meridian calendar really helps you understand more of what I was just talking about. And it's going to be like that today. When I don't come with 1,000 slides, I just kind of follow the blinking star. So I know I just took a couple pictures of these things. Let me send them over to myself in true Gemini fashion, and then we'll look at them together. But I was racing up to this place so I could like catch the sun right at midday. And I was actually a couple minutes late. And it's probably because I stopped to take these pictures of this heron. And who could blame me? And the reason why I wanted to share this is I find that it's really important for we stargazers to remember that though Venus and Jupiter and Mars and Saturn are so incredibly beautiful to behold, that the most important planet is the one that we chose. And we call her Earth. Yeah? Cool, I found this picture. Let me send this to me. And so when I go out to the sky, whether it's typically at night or day to like have ceremony or to share a thing, I really want to pay attention to which way the wind's coming from. You know, if the groundhogs come running, which they do at this park, how many? And in which direction, you know. And when I see a special animal like this heron, I tend to stop and take notice. Because though I had a mission, like this heron probably has more to say to me than what I expected to find that I went out for, you see. Let me show you this meridian calendar. And then we'll talk a little bit more about herons and maybe ibis. Okay, so we're not really zoomed in well enough to see, and that's maybe even better for us. But can everyone see this stone that I'm circling? Yeah, thanks, Phelan. Okay. And so I can tell it's equinox, by the way, because the shadow is on this circle. My favorite astrology, well, I guess astronomy calendar, but one that tracks the sun through the tropical signs of the zodiac is at the Vatican. And it's my favorite thing to show when I'm getting accused of, practicing devil worship or whatever folks say. It's like, your Pope's front lawn has a stolen obelisk that works like a sundial in a year calendar where you track the shadow length of that pagan thing through the tropical sign plaques that are north of it. So this is something we'll be speaking a little bit about the meridian, which there's a few different definitions, but for now, let's just say it's a north-south line. Okay, so if we draw a perfect north-south line on the ground, and I'm not talking about magnetic north and south, those things migrate. I'm talking about true north, right? Cardinal direction. So like Santa's place, North Pole. All right. And the meridian will always host the midday sun shadow, because the meridian always hosts the midday sun. Now we've kind of lost connection to the idea of noon, because these days we think of it as like a 12:00 thing on a clock, right? And that's necessary if we want to make the Zoom meeting on time and all that, like we need to have time zones and some kind of like, civilized approach to how we want to divide the hours of the day. We have to create things like hours and minutes and the like. But we've really lost like the idea of true noon, which is just the height of the light. Yeah. And so the highest altitude that the sun will reach every day is on the meridian. I just want to check in with the chat. Would anyone please write if you are living in the southern hemisphere? There are some names I didn't know here, and I'm assuming many of you are residing in Las Vegas. It's going to be a lot easier if I just speak for one hemisphere's point of view. So if anyone's in the southern hemisphere, please type now or forever hold your peace. And my other question would be, is anybody present? Were any of you born in the southern hemisphere?
I'm not seeing anything come in.
Nice. All right. So we're just going to speak for the northern hemisphere experience right now. Koa and I, so I will interrupt myself along the way. And I'm just going to share right now. Alicia, born in the Philippines in the tropics, which is awesome because the tropics kind of get both worlds or both hemispheres. And Alicia, maybe I'll do what I can to honor that along the way. But for now, especially given that Philippines is also north of the equator, we're just going to kind of speak about the northern point of view. So I have this mantra, a Gemini mantra that goes like this. These many branches I'm called to climb all emanate from the same trunk. So if you're willing to join me on this journey, we'll probably squirrel style jump from one branch to another and then over here. But we're going to be on the same tree the whole time, which is this idea of Earthstrology, okay? And I'm slowly seeing my way through, but I want to share this with you today. I had a really brilliant talk with Anna's 8-year-old boy, Koa, on the way to school today. It's my day to drive. And thanks to daylight losings crime, we're at a time once again where the sun's rising while we're driving to school. Before we left, we were admiring this nearly full Libra moon coming to set near Mount Tamalpais from our view and in the belt of Venus. And it was just beautiful, And so we were talking about moon phases. And I do my best to wait until Koa asks. And then I'm happy to talk about my favorite thing, which is the sky and that. And we're planning on going to Hawaii where he was born in just a little bit. We'll leave after the solar eclipse that's coming. And, we've been to Hawaii together a few times. And for those of you who know Maui, which is the island where we'll go, there's 2 volcanoes. And so one in the east is called Haleakala, which is the house of the sun. La is a guide of the sun. And on the other side, in the west side of Maui, Hale Mahina, which is the house of the moon. Hina's a Maui's mother, some say. There's many different images of Hina, but she's a goddess of the moon, right? So Koa asked this really brilliant question. Why do they call that one Haleakala, and why do they call the other one Hale Mahina? And fortunately, he asked this while the sun was rising. So he and I got to speak about sect a bunch. I didn't use that word. Can I maybe just for people who want to play, and I'm also just trying to encourage participation here because we're going to go there more and more. And I should have said this at the beginning, but instead of doing a bunch of stuff and having Q&A at the end, feel free. I'm watching the chat. Feel free to pop things into the chat at any point. And I might just invite you to unlock your microphone and ask directly or share directly or whatever. I really want this to be something we do together. Has anyone not heard of sect in astrology? S-E-C-T. Phelan, that's a no from you? That surprises me, but cool, right on. It's strange how this thing disappeared for a long, long time. I'm seeing the same from Alicia as well. Thanks for participating, y'all. Yeah, this is like a big deal in traditional astrology. And the idea is that daytime and nighttime are different. And you're like, oh yeah, right? Like, yes, they are. But we really don't think about it so much from the modern astrological lens. So back in the day, like there's different planets assigned to the day and to the night. And of course, as you can imagine, the sun is the light of day and the moon is the light of night, right? And this is a pretty like natural thing. From there, it gets kind of odd. Not that Venus is said to be an evening sect planet, but that Mars is as well. And that seems kind of backwards because we associate Mars with heat and hot and dry, you know. Some say it's like this magic trick that the ancients pulled to try to take some of the power away from Mars and from Saturn, who though Saturn we typically associate by temperament as like cold, you know, like night-like. That Saturn, along with Jupiter and the sun, is said to belong to the day sect. And Mercury, of course, is always everything both. So right now, Mercury's an evening star. I've got my blinds open, hoping to see him in a bit. And therefore, because Mercury is an evening star right now, Mercury currently belongs to the night sect. But as you know, soon he will hit the brakes. He's already hitting the brakes, but soon he'll put it in reverse. That actually happens on April Fool's Day, quite appropriately, right? Mercury retrograde. And then he'll dive into the fire of the sun and be reborn as a morning star. And at that time, then Mercury, along with Jupiter and Saturn, will belong to the day sect. And I don't want to get too deep into sect right now, but it's one of the many, many, many beautiful expressions of traditional astrology that feels so much more connected to nature than astrology is often taught these days. So just pretend you heard that whole thing, but with good grammar. Let me ask this. Which house does the sun rule? Anyone feel free to type or just unmute yourself and say out loud. So we see the fifth. And I'm sure many of you were taught that, right? So let me just say, like on average, just name like one clock time when the sun is actually in the fifth. And total estimate is cool here. But what time do you feel the sun is in the fifth house? So like 9 p.m., 9 to 10 p.m. Yeah, like average clock time, 8 to 10 p.m. From an old school point of view, the third and the fourth hours of the night, right? Where hours are not 60 minutes long. Those are called civil hours. Back in the day, we used to divide the light, sunrise to sunset, into 12 equal sections of daytime hours, and the night into 12 equal sections of nighttime hours, right? And the sun where I'm sitting, and probably in Vegas too, is just set. So the sun's now in the sixth, right? And then where's the sun go next? To the fifth. And that sounds backwards, right? But this is called the primary motion. I think we should be there a little bit. So if the sun is in the fifth at nighttime, what's wrong with that picture? Like, why would we say the sun is the natural ruler of the fifth house if that means nighttime? Don't you feel that the sun would want daytime? So in traditional astrology, you get to learn about planetary rejoicing. Planets are said to govern signs, or actually in the old language, which I prefer, they were just domicile lords and ladies. It's like a landlord, right? So Leo is the sun's house. But planets are said to rejoice in places, which we now call the houses. And it's said that the sun rejoices in the ninth. Right? And why does that make sense? Because that is midday. That is sunburn hour. Not only is it midday, but it's the sun having finished his daily climb. Now he's at the top of the mountain and on the way down. Right? The moon is said to rejoice in the third. Why I would suggest because the sun visits the third at midnight. And I don't mean 12 on a clock. I mean halfway between sunset and sunrise when the sun roots down beneath the ground. All right, so I feel like we should connect to the cardinal directions together, and that's going to help me, honor what we came here to do. Do you all know which direction from where you sit the sun just set? Okay, so turn there, please. And now you're west. For me, that's this way. And if you want to play along, my posture for the west is like this. My hands in front of me making a horizon with the palms down. Because the west is the place of the rest. Many traditions actually will begin their directional work in the west. I like to begin in the north. But it's easier for y'all to answer that question, do you know where the sun just set? Then the next question I have to ask. So we're all in the northern hemisphere. So we're now facing west if you're playing along. And that means that your right shoulder is facing north. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to turn what we used to call sunwise. These days we call it clockwise. And we're going to turn now to where our right shoulder is facing. And what I'll encourage you to do as you do is bring your hands down. And then you go down to the roots, okay? So my posture for the roots, it's not the energy down beneath you, by the way. It's down and in front of you. And that's the IC, the Imam Cheli, the bottom of the heavens. Kind of sounds like hell, right? And so I like for this one to hold my arms in front of me like this, as if I'm pulling water from a well, or kind of digging up the soil of the ancient ones. And this is where I like to start. So there's a couple of reasons for that. It's the IC, this is the womb. It's also the tomb, and therefore it's the womb. All right. But if I'm out at night, you and I are blessed in this day and age, in this hemisphere north of the equator, to have a North Star. It's not always like that. So if you know Polaris, Pole Star, North Star, you can find that star at night and you can align your heart to the north, and now you have the directions, right? So when I'm out in my practice, there's a kind of fourfold thing I do. I might be running out to go see a moon Spica conjunction. But before I'm even there, I will get directions. So I say connections, just be on the earth. And that's usually eyes closed for me. I want to just feel the earth beneath my feet. And then I'll connect with Polaris. So connection, directions, and then I'll do this practice that I'll show you. Then reception, then reflection. So I'm down here in the north. I'm kind of digging from the well of the ancient ones. I'm sending whispers to my ancestors and also to those who founded this craft in Babylon and Kemet, the land we call Egypt now, and India and China, the stone circle builders, the native folks here and south of everywhere. Do you know what I mean? It's those roots, and I'm trying to honor those who came before me, right? And so rooting in. And I'll do this for a while, typically. When I do it well, especially at night, I'll feel a coldness, and then I know I'm there connected to the place of the midnight sun. And then I'll rise, and so we'll go to our right shoulder, which is now facing east. And the posture here is we're going to take that midnight sun and we're going to pick it up and bring it to the eastern horizon with our hands in front of us and our palms up. Okay. And this is the place of the rise. Yeah. So it's new, it's youth. Traditionally the ascendant was associated with your whole life, your path, your course, your vitality, your body, your being, but also your youth, right? Because it's what's new. Just think of the sunrise. Yeah. And there I'm okay, well, I just connected to the ancient ones. How can I bring something new to this thing we've been doing for so long, right? It's okay to bring a little bit of me to it, Yeah. And when I'm feeling that, I might open my shoulders, by the way, and when I do, I'll trace the Aries glyph. The eastern sky works like the Aries glyph. Especially if you're at the equator, if you watch the east at night, stars that rise north of east will go to the north, and stars that rise south of east will go to the south, and they literally then ram's horn hook back around to set in the west behind you, which is, I'm sure, why we associate the eastern sign, Aries, with the ram, and why you see rams all over the world in places like Egypt and other places, all right? So anyway, I'm at the rise, and then it's like, okay, how can I bring that energy, this new thing, and bring it up to the reach? And then I'm south, and my hands are up like this, right? And again, it's not right above your head. That's a different trip. Like the midheaven can be high, it can be low, but it's always in front of you and up. And for us Northern Hemispherians, it's always in the south, right? And usually I will do this until it hurts. Like in Seattle, where I lived for a long time, some of the elders there, tribal elders, when they walk into the room, this is a sign of respect. And the young ones raise their arms. And they will, like, you'll have your arms up for like half an hour. And it kills. I think this is one of the ways that they like made warriors, But I always like to think of that when I'm facing south, like this is a place like the height of the light. This is the place where I'm now trying to bring my new creations, what rose in me, to like a visible place, and to do it in an honorable and a good and reverent and respectful way, And I'll usually do this until I hurt a bit, which for me doesn't take that long anymore. But then I get to remember also like what goes up must come down, and I'll turn to the west. And then my hands come down. And then you're doing that kind of like Qigong thing of like bringing the energy down into the lower Dantian, It's like your own horizon. And I'll honor what's resting, that I come back down to the earth, right? Like it's important to like ground and reconnect and like slow my mind and to be with the land and to be with like my partner, And then I'll come down back to the north typically. And from there, maybe you can do this with me if you'd like. Let's reach our hands directly above our heads. And what I'll encourage you to do as well, let's just be there for right now. Look up, please. Okay, so I'm seeing a ceiling, but above that ceiling, there's a roof. And above that roof, there's sky. And it's still too light out right now for me to see whatever star is up there. But I can guarantee you that the star that I'm pointing to is different than the one you are. Because I'm the only one sitting right here right now. The above, even though many of you are in Las Vegas right now, like if you're doing this with me, you're pointing to a different star than your neighbor down the road. Earth is curved, even the person down the street, And Earth moves quickly, so I'm actually pointing my hands towards a different place in space than I was when I first reached them up. The above is entirely unique. It is yours. But now, please keep your hands up and reach your energy down through your spine and meet me in the center of the earth. This is the place where we are all one. The below is the whole. And that, by the way, that center of earth is where we measure astrology from. We don't measure astrology from the surface of earth, where we live, breathe, and witness these heavenly happenings, but rather from the center of the earth where we are all one. It is truly as above, so below. We are measuring our experience of Earth's experience of the heavenly happenings. Especially when we're talking planets in the signs, planets in the houses are a little bit more unique, more particular, more like that thing that you're reaching your hands up to. All right, we're all really tired now, and some of us are being attacked by dogs. So let's bring the energy of the above down while we bring the energy of the below up, and we'll meet in the center. We'll meet in our heart in prayer, which is the seventh direction because it's the first. Okay, thanks for playing that with me, right? So this is something I do every time I enter the temple of the sky. It's how I get to the temple. connections, directions, reception, reflection. And while I'm spinning around like that, there might be a star, it might be bright, it might not be. That's just like, look at me. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'll get back to you and I'll finish my thing and then I'll go get with that star. And it might not be what I set out to do, you know? But that star wants my attention and I'm going to say, cool, like, who are you? I'm Brett. And try to resist that like temptation I have to pull out my app or even to like connect the dots because I know the sky very well and say, oh, you're Arcturus, or, you know, like, no, who are you? You big orange, beautiful being. I'm Brett. Will you teach me? Will you speak to me? Will you speak through me? And maybe that's when a bird flies by. Maybe that's when I hear a coyote. Maybe that's when, for the first time in 10 years, I think of some song from the 80s that reminds me of my sister. Do you know what I'm saying? Like something happens and like spirit will speak to you in your language. And if we go out there only like honoring these names for the stars that we've used for so long or whatever, we miss that opportunity. And we as astrologers typically miss the opportunity to hear the heavens because we're so busy telling the heavens what they are. So I went out the other day to see the Moon-Venus conjunction. And in the shamanic astrology tradition where I started, it's known as the chakra root chakra gate of Inanna's descent. And I'm like out doing that to just bring offerings in my prayers and to beg to have Venus's assistance for me to get my S together and whatnot, But before I do that, by the way, I'm at the roots, rise, reach, and rest. And actually, when I went out the other day for that, it was Moon, Venus, and Mars. It was more than the other day. And Mars rose first, but the dawn light was already there. And I couldn't see Mars. But then I noticed a deer, like far from me, and just the silhouette. And the deer was down eating. And deer is like very important to all of us, but very important to me. Deer reminds us that we come from nature and helps bring us back to the edge, back to the forest. And in some of the Mesoamerican traditions, I was born on a day called three Manik, or three Kish, right? So I usually see 3 deer. This time I saw 1. And he's eating, and I zoomed in. I had this camera, right? Because I want to take pictures for peeps and for me. And I zoomed in, and then he looks up over here, and then I just followed his gaze, and there was Mars. I couldn't find Mars, but the deer showed me where to go. And then later, Venus was there with the moon, and though they were in Aquarius at the time, it just felt so Taurus, this place that we think of as Venus's home, where the moon is said to be an honored guest, and I just felt them together. And then I looked down, and again in silhouette, there was a cow grazing. And it's just like, thank you. The other night we were in Sacramento, and Phelan, you had taken off at this point, because Phelan was up there as well. I was speaking about Cassiopeia. Well, before this, I was speaking about the twins, Castor and Pollux, and I had people there, and 2 birds flew right beneath them. Just twin birds. And then we looked over to Cassiopeia, which is like a W, or like a 3, or like an M, or like an E, depending on the time of the night and season. And I was speaking about that, and this like crew of birds flew, they started as a V, and then they literally made a W, or like an M in the sky as they flew over us, right? And everybody starts giggling and stuff, right? Like that's how the sky plays. And it's not only happening at night, So I'll tell you right now, like the most important thing I could tell you today is if you want to connect more to the sky, if you want to learn more of this kind of like ancient marriage of heaven and earth, right, upon which our craft is founded, the worst thing you can do is shut yourself down with some kind of shame of like, oh, I should know these things. And I can't tell you how often I'm like, all right, everyone look at this beautiful light. Who is that? And maybe I'm pointing at Jupiter. And I'll just hear people like, oh God, I should know. And it's just like, you just slammed the temple door shut. The password to the temple of the sky is a response called awe, wonder. You know, when I'm under dark sky and I have people out, like, we're all so excited, which is great. So I don't try to talk right away. I try to encourage some silence. I might bring them through this direction practice and then just be there. And it's like when people start giggling a little bit on their own, now we know we're in. Because they just heard something or smelled something or remembered something, you know? And like, that's you're in the temple. And this, of course, isn't only about like sky yoga, you know, it's like connecting in, remembering who we are, connecting to spirit. All right. So anyway, this morning, I'm in the minivan with Koa and the sun's rising. And we had just been talking about moon phases, which was really cool. And I told them that, you know, most people use this eightfold system. And I talked to them about new moon and the waxing crescent and the waxing half moon and the waxing gibbous and the full moon, and then the waning gibbous and the waning half and the waning crescent and the new moon. And I first talked to him just about waxing and waning, right? Which, by the way, like sect, were associated traditionally in the solar side of the cycle because the moon is growing in light, and the lunar side of the cycle because the moon is shrinking in light. It also has something to do with like what's happening outside when you see the moon. But anyway, we're talking about these phases, and he really gets it, which is amazing. And he's always asking like the questions I'm hoping I'll ask. And I'll just say, like, because he hasn't learned this stuff on paper, you know, he doesn't have to clear like the cobwebs as much. Like, I learned how to play saxophone with like from a trumpet teacher, and it was, I have so many bad habits, you know, and I don't, it's like, you know, that was my path, right? But so some like things that I want to like get better at, I have to like really kind of just release some of these old stuff of how I used to do it. You know how that, like, if you go study Qigong, they're like, you don't even know how to walk, right? It's like, oh no. And then you have to start all that stuff again, right? Anyway, he doesn't have so much of that. And it's amazing to see, he's a really smart guy, but it's amazing to see how quickly it lands for him, you know? And you could just really feel him get it. So I told him then, like, I prefer a system of 12 phases. And the reason why is because they work with whole sign aspects. We haven't talked about aspects yet. By the way, the moon and watching the moon grow and then shrink is the best way to learn aspects and to embody them. I mean, he and I have done this some, like where I'll have him point his hand to the setting sun and then the hand to the waxing gibbous moon over there. I don't say this is a trine, right? Like feel it in your body. I'll tell you that, you know what I mean? But I want him to like embody these things. And when I was in Hawaii once, I watched this beautiful hula of kids, like young kids who were olias that chant, singing about the phases of the moon and doing this. And I was really like, I was crying. So I told him how I like 12 phases, and I just told him because the 12 signs, you know, because I'm an astrologer. But I told him, you know, in Hawaii, they have 30 phases. They have a name for every day, right? And he's like, whoa, and we're going there. And so I actually sent a text to our friend there who lives on Haleakala. And I was like, hey, can we come over for the Hilo moon? And he said, well, what's the Hilo moon? And I told him about where Hilo is and why they see sunrise first, because they're the easternmost place on the islands. And asked him, what do you think Hilo means? And he said, east. And I said, it's kind of like that. And then you got west. Or sorry, he got first. Hilo means first. So he's like, yeah, this is the first moon. And so he was asking then, like, why is Haleakala called Haleakala? And why is Hale Mahina called Hale Mahina? It's like, why is the big one the sun and the small one the moon? Do you think because it's the sun is bigger? I said, oh, maybe, but I don't think so. And as I said earlier, like we were having this conversation as the sun was rising. And I said, hey, what direction is that? And he had to think about it for a while. But then he goes east, like he got it right. Yeah, and I said, great. So sunrise is in the east. And what direction were we looking at this morning when we were watching the moon set? And he said, west. And I said, so the sun rises in the east, right? He said, yeah. The sun sets in the west. Yeah. I said, so like the day begins when the sun rises in the east, right? He said, yeah. And the night begins when the sun sets in the west. He said, yeah. It's like in this way we can associate east with day and west with night. Does that make sense? And he says, yes. And I said, which one's more like the sun, the day or the night? And he said, the day. And I said, which one's more like the moon, the day or the night? And he said, the night. And I said, so we just made this little thing, whether it's true or not, that the east is like the sun, the day is like the sun, and therefore we can say like the east is kind of like the day and the sun, right? He said, yeah. And the west is like the moon and the night. He said, yeah. He said, well, on Hawaii, Haleakala is in the east, the house of the sun is the east, and the house of the moon, Halemahina, is in the west. Do you get it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, by the way, you were born on Haleakala. He was like, well, I was born in Makawao. I was like, Makawau's on Haleakala, dude. And I said, so what we're going to do when we go there is we'll go to Makawao, and from the house of the sun, we'll watch the sunset in the west, and then we'll see the Hilo moon. And he's like, sweet, right? So that's the plan. So clouds allowing, right? But like for me, this is just kind of remembering the roots of our craft. So let me get back to this other place where we were. So this is a meridian calendar. Actually, I think I should share this in a different way so you can see my little circly thing. And the way it works is like, first it's a sundial, just like you are, if you're willing to stand tall. Yeah. And so as the sun rises in the east, the shadow is pointing west. And then as the sun, and this is northern hemisphere, culminates due south, and that's where the sun culminates every day, exactly south. That's where the moon culminates. That's where Sirius culminates. That's where Venus and Mars and Jupiter and all the zodiac stars, they all peak in the south if you live north of the equator. Well, if you live north of the Tropic of Cancer, so let me honor Alicia's birthplace in the tropics. The tropics kind of go both ways, and I think we won't go there today because I'm looking at the time. So when the sun souths, like that used to be called noon. There were 3 times a day: sunrise, sun southing, noon, and sunset, right? And this, by the way, is what we called this sunwise. Now we call it clockwise, and it's why our clocks do this, because they were designed in the northern hemisphere where the sun does this. Rising in the east, reaching in the south, resting in the west. Or if you have the courage to turn your back to the light, you will see the shadow moving clockwise from the west at sunrise to the north at noon to the east at sunset. Sunset's in the west and the shadow's east, yeah? So we used to call this noon, now we call it local apparent solar noon, because noon has become some number on a clock. And somehow I have noon at the same time that you do in Las Vegas, right? Because we're in the same time zone, though we're definitely experiencing this at a very different time. All right, and I just missed this, because you can see, because I went and took a picture of this guy, well, 5, and like had a prayer with him and said thank you. But you can see here that the shadow is pointing on the line, right? This is a meridian line. It's exactly south-north. You could go here at night, you could stand here, you could face the direction that that shadow is pointing, and you would see North Star. Right? And so every day when the shadow's on this line, I know it's midday. I know it's true noon. I know, let's talk astrology, in quadrant houses here, that the sun has just moved from the 10th to the 9th. As the sun rises in the 12th, climbs through the 11th, through the 10th to the reach, which is the cusp of the 9th and the 10th house, and then it moves into the 9th. This is called the primary motion, thanks to the spinning of the earth. The sky spins, bringing the sun with it. And this is the joy of the sun. Now, how much more sense does it make for the sun to joy in the 9th than for the sun to rule the 5th? I mean, from like a nature point of view, I can only see 2 of you on the screen here, but please raise your hand if you feel that makes more sense naturally. And I'm not talking about astrologically or how you're going to work with it, but doesn't it make more sense that this is the hour of the sun versus 9 p.m.? Daniel, thank you. Like Daniel came on, he's like, I'm going to raise my hand to that. It's like, hallelujah. right? And this is like the ninth is called the house of God, you know. And now we get Carol's Zoom hand high five with the phases of the moon during eclipse. Beautiful, actually phases of the eclipse. Yeah, and so like by the way, you can see I just missed it, right? Like the sun is over here in the ninth, which means it's now cadent. Ninth means falling. Cadent means falling, right? Because of this character, but I'm happy, right? So I'm teaching an astronomy class right now where I wanted to get this picture. So by the way, like if I zoomed in here, you're probably not going to see it, but this down here says solstice, and it says June 21st. And this says equinox, and it says September 21st and like March 20th, I think. And then over here it says solstice. Sorry, this one would say December 21st, and this one would say June 21st. Because the way the meridian calendar works, you know it's midday when the shadow points north. But when the sun is in like Sagittarius or Capricorn, the sun is low, right? Wintertime, or late fall, early winter, right? And the low sun will cast a longer shadow. So the way a meridian calendar works is you're taking that midday shadow and you're seeing how long it is. And the shortest shadow of the year, the shortest shadow of the day, every day is the shadow pointing north because the sun climbs to in the south, okay? So like the Boy Scout way of doing this thing is not like pushing my Astro Gold iPhone app until the sun is on the midheaven and then drawing a line on the ground. That's what I do now. It's like you just draw the shadow on the ground around the time of midday, and whichever one you drew that is shortest, that's pointing north, and now you have your meridian. And now you can use that meridian to work the night sky. You can use that meridian to know, just like this, that it's midday every day when the shadow points that way. Hopefully that makes sense. And so this is the Gemini glyph, by the way. This is the trick of the Gemini glyph. As the sun climbs higher and higher until summer solstice, as it is now, the midday shadow will get shorter and shorter and shorter until you get your shortest shadow of the year, which is midday at summer solstice. And that's on this little circle here, right? Now, if this was an old device and not built by rationalist astronomers of our day and age, but thanks to them for building a stone circle, that's cool. This would say Gemini and this would say Cancer. Now they have like May 21st written down there and like July, and you're like what? Like, why doesn't it say May 1st? Like, what are these numbers? You know what I mean? But this is what is called in astrology, it's called Antisha. When I say that to Greek people, are like, they like spit water. They're like, no, it's anti-skia. Skia is Greek for shadow. And so people typically use what in astrology today we call Antisha, like shadow point. So 0 degrees Scorpio is equivalent to 29 degrees Aquarius. It's just Scorpio's on the way to the longest shadow at winter solstice, and Aquarius is coming back from it. By the way, Antisha points, or Antishon they're called, will always add to 30. And Sagittarius and Capricorn pair, right? Sagittarius is going to solstice, Capricorn's coming back from solstice. Scorpio and Aquarius pair. Libra and Pisces pair. So like 5 Libra is Antisha 25 Pisces. Okay, and so that's the trick, by the way, when I'm like, we can see the sun at Scorpio time, or you can also see it at Aquarius time. And if I see it at 5 Scorpio, then you see it at 25 Aquarius. Those two suns take the same path through the sky, cast the same shadow length at midday. So I can't necessarily tell just looking at the shadow if it's Aries equinox or Libra equinox, because the sun on those 2 days will take the same path through the sky, rising due east, climbing to the same height, setting due west. Does that make sense? I can if I just look around and see that there's flowers versus falling leaves. You know what I'm saying? So like that's Earthstrology. Pay attention. Like, what do we do for a solar return? We might set intentions for the year ahead. We might cast some charts. We might look at the ascendant ruler and all the things that we do as astrologers. How about go the fuck outside, pardon me, and like connect to the sun and see how Earth does you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like a seasonal sun sign astrologer, but I also am. I'm not like a Christian, but I am, because I'm a child of the sun. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so I want to do that at my solar return time. And sorry if I burned any bridges right then. So this is a lot cooler if what's written here is like Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. But it's still an amazing device, and I encourage you to build one. And they're really not that hard to do. I was remembering, by the way, when I was taking you through my directional postures earlier, that I have a PDF that I'll send Carol to send out with this recording that I created for my School of Earthstrology for doing things like that. And hopefully now you're feeling a little bit more of why I call it the School of Earthstrology. Okay, so there's 2 reasons why I loved blue heron here. Well, actually there's about 5,000, but let me tell you my 2 favorite. I guess I'll say first and foremost, for me, when I really started tuning into the language of the birds, and I don't mean only spoken by birds, groundhogs, fallen leaves, songs I hear, whatever, it's just one of the old words for mystical language. In Seattle, where I lived at the time, there are tons of these blue herons. And I used to record readings in, and I'd walk around in the park, on the water, sometimes at night, and just see these blue herons, and then I'd stop. And a friend of mine, by the way, taught me how you get close to a blue heron. If you've seen herons, or other birds like this, right, like egrets, they walk super slowly. They're just chill, So if you want to get close to a heron, you just chill, and it'll look around like you, like this, and then it looks away to go fish, and you take a step closer. Look around. It takes about an hour, but you can get right next to a heron if you take one step every 5 minutes. You can literally just be right there and be like, "What's up, dude?" But this is a fun fact about herons. So let me go here first. One of the reasons why I love seeing this heron at this time of the sun ingressing Aries and preparing for the Libra lunar eclipse that we know happened a couple nights ago is that, like many and maybe even most birds, heron are monogamous. And if their partner dies, they won't repartner. They're super Libra in that way, I might suggest. But they're also crazy Aries. Though they're monogamous, you'll never see them together because it's more efficient to fish alone. So they'll hang out at their nest or whatever, but then they go do their thing. And of course, when there's babies, one's going to take care of and defend the babies while the other one's out catching fish to go, repurpose that food into their babies' beaks or whatever, right? But I've never seen 2 herons next to each other, right? And so they really do that Libra Aries, right? Relationship axis, I'll say. I always learned that Libra was relationship. No, it's othership. And if you don't balance that with Aries selfness, you're effed, right? We need othership and selfness in balance to meet in the middle way of right relationship, yes? Okay, so the other reason why I love herons so much is it feels to me just with our local climate, our local representative of Jehuti, who you may know as Thoth, or Thoth, or Tot, or Thoth, who was the ibis-headed netter of the Kemet tradition, right? So let me say it in a different way, the bird-headed god of Egypt. That might land more for folks. Importantly, Jehuti actually is shown in 2 different ways. One, the ibis, right? That's kind of this long beak heron. And people say that's because he's associated with the moon and their beaks look like a crescent. But there's a different guide of the moon, that's called Khonsu. The reason why Jehuti or Thoth, who's later maybe Hermes, at least Hermes Trismegistus, is associated with the moon just as much as the sun, because he kept the days. He and his consort Seshet, the lady of the measuring cord, they kept the days. They brought in the numbers, the astronomy, the calendars, right? And so if we want to keep time with the lights, natural time, we're going to do this with the moon. Yeah, and so that's why you'll often see like imagery of Jehuti or Thoth in the moon. Okay. But he's shown in two ways, the ibis and the baboon. And my claim is that these have to do with what in astronomy and astrology we call the secondary and the primary motion, respectively. Okay, now the primary motion we were just doing, it's from the roots to the rise to the reach to the rest, right? Sunrise, noon, sunset, midday, but also moon day, moonrise, moon's culmination, moonset, like everything's doing that, right? It's just that the sun does it the most dramatically. Because while a moonrise is a beautiful thing to behold, I was almost going to ask Anna if we could just miss the first class at Koa's school today, because I was like, I want to see the moon set into the mountain, you know. A moon set is a beautiful thing to behold, you know, and I want to miss it. But it's not like moon setting is going to change things from day to night. The sun does that. And following the sun through the houses will really help you understand, if you look around, like why we delineate houses in this way. We sit on a hill up above an elementary school, and depending on where we are in the whole daylight losing crime situation, but just like naturally in planetary hours, when the sun's in the 3rd and the 4th hours of the day, which is the sun in the 11th house, kids come out for their first recess. And I just watch them circle up and do the most 11th house things possible. And it's so cool to have like an actual, you know, experiential witness of the sun moving through the houses. Do you feel me? So this motion of the sun moving through, or the moon, anything moving through the houses, that was called sunwise, because the sun does this most dramatically and does it every 24 hours, right? Whereas this motion, the motion through the signs, right, like from Scorpio to Sagittarius to Capricorn to Aquarius, like this, you know, sun will do, and I don't know why I started there, because right now I'm pointing to Aries and Taurus and like that, right? Like the moon is going to go through that way most quickly. Sun takes a year to get around, the moon does it in 27 days, right? So that was called the moonwise motion, especially because, as I said before, since you'll go blind trying to follow the sun through the stars, the original zodiacs were all lunar. All the, you know, lunar mansion traditions, nakshatras from one place, because you could actually see the moon moving through. Yeah. And that's the moonwise direction, right? So for me, the baboon is the image of the sunwise motion. Why? Because baboons, they will literally compete. I've never seen this. I'd love to, probably from a distance, but they will compete with the others in their troop to get high ground, to be the one who receives the rays of the sun first in the morning. And then I've seen some video of it, they're screaming and just partying. You know what I mean? It's awesome. They would like literally fight each other to get to see the sunlight first. And so for me, the baboon expression of Jehuti is that image of keeping the days. Let's see the sunrise. See what I mean? Whereas the ibis, like this is the year, which is the sun through the signs. Why? Because like other migratory birds, the sun flies south for the winter. And literally, when I use winter, that's a hemispheric term, isn't it? But Egypt's in the northern hemisphere, like Vegas. So the sun flies south for the winter. Right? Like literally, when the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, the sun is above the Tropic of Capricorn. And I want everyone to just like really be in that for a second, because you will be told again and again by rationalist astronomers, by sidereal astrologers, by the 13th sign crime folks, that your zodiac, if you're practicing with the tropical zodiac like I do, I shouldn't assume about you, okay? But let me say the tropical zodiac is pure symbology. There's no astronomy to it, because the signs and the constellations don't align. And it's kind of heartbreaking when for the first time, if you're working with the tropical zodiac, you wave your little iPhone app at Jupiter and Taurus, and you're like, Jupiter and Taurus, you're like, wait a second, that's the ram. Like, what just happened, right? Everything just falls apart, and you're like, I feel shame. But the tropical zodiac is incredibly astronomical. And one of the reasons why I really like to help people reconnect to the directions is that, like so many systems of ancient wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac is directionally aligned. In fact, I would say its signs are directionally defined. North is north everywhere on Earth. And Earth's North Pole leans towards the place on the sun's path, the ecliptic, that we call zero Cancer. And therefore, when the sun is in zero Cancer, it shines above the Tropic of Cancer. The tropical zodiac is named for the same thing that the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn are named for, which is the Greek word tropikos, which means turn around. They're the bounds of the sun's path. So when you hear that, like, the moon is out of bounds, for example, and she's doing that in crazy ways right now every month, that means she's either north of the Tropic of Cancer or she's south of the Tropic of Capricorn, where the sun could never go, not in his wildest dreams. Yeah? And so the winter sun, like the Capricorn ingress, is literally the sun as far as he can go from Las Vegas. Right? And, you know, starting really at the Tropic of Cancer, which is the closest the sun will get to you. And that's why the sun at that time is tallest in your sky. Just like, you know, walking towards the Rio. For those of you not in Las Vegas, that's a casino. It appears like the building's getting taller. And when you walk away, it appears to get shorter, right? Like the sun's walking towards you for 6 months a year, and then walking away for 6 months a year. And the sun goes high for those 6 months, and then it goes low for those 6 months. And when the sun goes high, the shadow gets shorter at midday. And when the sun goes low, the shadow gets longer. Do you see the Gemini glyph? Right? I mean, it's tracing the same line, that midday shadow, but one goes that way and one comes back. Yeah? And on the horizons, it goes this way for 6 months and comes back for 6 months, bam. But we say Cancer's ruled by the moon. And by the way, who walks like this? Crabs. And where do they live? They live in the tides, where the sea walks like this. So much of our heritage is about tropical astronomy. And, you know, maybe I shouldn't bring this kind of talk to the Stargazers Club, but a lot of this has to do with how the Earth and the sun relate, right? So that's the whole point of the school of Earthstrology. To not to honor our astrology, but in the old way, the old natural roots. And again, while I'm not saying like the sun is a natural ruler of the fifth can't work for you, if that's part of your astrology, I would never tell you to change it, but I might challenge it and just saying why would the sun want nighttime? Doesn't it make more sense if the sun rejoices in the ninth? Maybe add that, try both, see what works, Traditionally, the planets are said to joy in the houses. The fifth is said to be the joy of Venus. Why? What's happening at 8 to 10 p.m.? You're out at the club. You know what I'm saying? In some astrologies, the fifth is associated with taverns, games of chance. Now, you live in Vegas where they're rolling dice 24 hours, so, you defy traditional astrology. But typically that's like a fifth house thing, and not Venus in the fifth, the sun in the fifth. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. So the ibis bird, or the ibis bird, like any migratory bird, literally flies south for the winter and then comes back. And the sun does that. It's actually why I believe, though others suggest there's a different reason that has to do with the flow of the Nile, it's why I believe the Egyptians called Southern Egypt Upper Egypt and Northern Egypt Lower Egypt. And the reason why is in the southern sky, the sun is up. In the southern sky, the sun is up. In the northern sky, the sun is down beneath the ground. Right? The rise in the east, the reach in the south, the rest in the west. In Kemet, they didn't have a word for death. They'd call it westing, because it was known which wested would later go through the underworld and rise again in the east. Do you see? So one of the things I said I was going to talk about today, and I have been in sneaky little ways, but now the Miyagi will show you why you've been waxing on and waxing off, is the seasons of the day. And this, by the way, is the key to the great astrological timing or fractal timing technique called secondary progressions. I'm 48 and a half years old, and for some reason I'm going to look at a chart from when I was 48 and a half days old. You know, it's funny that like astronomers today, they kind of stop it. Your signs and constellations don't align. You don't know what you're doing. Like, dude, if you knew what I'm actually doing, you would ridicule me for hours. Like, I'm looking at a chart when I was 48 and a half days old because I'm 48 and a half years old. You know what I mean? That's like, then duck before the rationalists smack you because it makes no sense. Or does it? Right? Because first of all, like when I was 48 and a half days old, I wasn't really here yet. Right? Like I'm not in my body, like I don't even know what a hand is. But powerful things are happening in the heavens, perhaps. And, you know, I might experience that very directly. You know, I might see my parents fight for the first time. Dad might leave. I might get left on some church doorstep. You know, I might see my parents like make out for the first time. I might see my mom dance to some song she likes on the radio. Which, by the way, when I look at progressions, I always want to find out what day of that year I was born in 75 it was. And then go look at the hit songs and listen to them. Because I'm like living that day for a year. Do you get me? But so why do they work? For a couple of reasons. One, they're looking at the fourth trimester. The idea there, which I imagine you've heard, is like if we do indeed spend 9 months in utero, and that of course is not true for all of us, we need another 3 months to complete the orbit from the time we were seeded. And secondary progressions really lenses into that fourth trimester because those 90 days equals 90 years, equals a lifetime. Do you see? But the other piece of this is the day and the year are committed to the same cycle of yin and yang, or yang and yin, right? Like sunrise is like spring, and the sun springs up. Midday is like the beginning of summer, the height of the light. Here's autumn, right? And here's midnight is like winter. I mean, intriguingly, most of us were born into a culture that begins its days in the middle of the night. And if you live in the northern hemisphere, it begins its years in the middle of the year's night. So I think from here, I want to show just another picture to you of encouragement, which is listen to the birds. This one on the left is May 2nd, 2021. It's when Venus became visible again to my eyes after she had been gone for more than 2 months. Venus, from Earth's point of view, disappears because she goes back behind the sun to a place we could never see, right? And then she reappears as an evening star. If you look at the old Babylonian astrology, like this is what they were tracking. Check out the Venus tablet of Amasuduka sometime, right? They're like Venus appeared in the east, then she later disappeared, then she reappears in the west, then she later disappears. They track 21 years of it in that tablet. So I'm out just worshiping Venus here at this time, right? And in one of the traditions where I was trained, like we honor the sky, well, Venus moving through the chakras, and I wasn't taught it this way, but the sky is taught it to me. Like you can see the red and the orange and the yellow, and like the sky has chakras, or really that's the sky-earth marriage, right? So I'm out here doing this thing, and then this owl flies in. And I had taken some pictures, and I just put my camera away because the camera gets between me and the temple, you know? And so the owl comes in, and he was hard to see, but I could tell that he turned his head towards me. And, like for me, like our little thing was, he's like, oh, you're into this shit too? And I was like, totally, dude. And then he just like turned back around to like worship Venus like I was. And then I was like, dude, can I take a picture of you? And that's one of those times when I would rarely hear a no. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to take that picture so bad it has to be a yes. I'm not sure that owl said yes, but I assumed so. And there you go. My favorite photo I've ever taken. Right? It's like me, owl, Venus, who by the way was in Taurus at the time, and it was just beauty and all this, you know? And I experience it so often that on one level it kind of feels like, especially when I'm waking up at like 4 in the morning to go see some kind of morning star situation, which really helps you honor sect. It's like when I'm waking up right now to see Venus as a morning star, it's kind of a drag, especially because we don't have east. If I was at my sister's place, like she looks east but not west. So I got to get in the car and like drive a bit and like suit up and hike or jump a fence and challenge the law. For West, I just like the sun sets and I check it out. Do you know what I mean? And it's a much easier time for somebody who was born at 8 p.m. And you can really feel sect in that, right? You can really feel day and night. And by the way, there's the thing that I was really honored to experience when I was last in Sedona, and I had some students there, and one of them said, actually two at the same time, oh, the sun just hit the IC. And they're not looking, so we were out there in the middle of the night, right? Looking at the stars. They're not like casting charts and pushing buttons on their phone. You can feel it in your bones. And I don't care if it's summertime in Vegas. I mean, y'all know actually better than most, like the desert's hot and the desert's cold. And whether it's a cold night or a hot night, when the sun hits the IC, it gets a lot colder. And you just feel it, you know? And so two at the same time, it's like, oh, the sun just hit the IC. And we looked at the chart then, and it was like, exactly, yeah, you know? And so much of our tradition actually comes through experience. And that's what I'm just trying to remind people, like, go out, experience these things, right? Like, don't just like use the rules. Like, go experience them and you'll remember the proofs. And there's stupid little things that happen. Like, I used to think the 12th house was hidden things because those houses block my view. Actually, then I was talking about trees or mountains, you know? I never had a clean view of the east. But then I realized one night, and actually this is on Haleakala, where I've had a lot of simple revelations, especially around the sun, that I'm out there working the sky all night, you know? And by the way, if you're ever on Haleakala, there's a little shelter at the top of the peak where you can go and like get warm for a little bit. Why I'm sharing this with you is it has working electrical outlets. So bring your tea kettle and have tea parties. It's good, right? And so I've done this a lot. And I'm like out, like hanging out with people at night, crowds dwindling because we're getting super late, sun's about to rise. And what happens when the sun almost rises? Like the stars go away. Right? Sun rises to illuminate the earth, but when he does, he hides the heavens. And that's why the 12th house is hidden things. And I'm comforted when I make these stupid little, it's always like, huh, right? And you're like, oh, obviously. And then I'm comforted when I go back in some of the traditional astrology and see that the ancients were talking about that. It's like, oh, right. You know, why does the moon rule the third? It's the middle of the night. So if the third is language, it's dream language. Okay, so let's do a little chart example here, and I'll try to tie this whole room together. If anybody, please type, well, let's do that first, and then I'll see if there's any questions. We're kind of at the edge of our time. So please just write in your sun, moon, and rising sign. If you'd like to play. Okay, so we have Leo, Sun, Cancer, Moon, and Pisces rising. Is that okay? Cool. All right, so Leo, Sun, Cancer, Moon, Pisces rising. A study in essential dignity. Essential, by the way, and here is one of those suns in the fifth, at least the whole sign fifth. Right. So this is another thing that I'd really encourage you to do. And the astro dice are the place to be. I'll show you a little game with you that you can play with them later. But you want to train yourself to like expand your astrology 12-fold if you, like I, were first only shown the Aries rising chart and taught that the 10th was like Capricorn and whatnot. I was born with Gemini rising, like my 10th is not Capricorn. So learn the 12 maps, right? And for Pisces, Cancer's not the 4th, Cancer's the 5th. So that's speaking whole sign. With Pisces rising, you tend to get a pretty good square going on with your horizon and your meridian anyway. And so we know here, like, I mean, I'd really have to ask, where is the birthplace to know something more about Leo? But I do know that this is a northern hemisphere birth because we only have one born from the tropics, at least the people that chose to play, right? And so Leo time, like we all know that because, you know, and it's tricky for southern hemisphere students, right? Astrology these days, at least tropical astrology, is taught in such a seasonal way. And we typically learn, and it feels pretty real, that the sun is said to be the domicile lord of the place called Leo because it's the hottest month of the year. It's kind of hard to, like, you know, pet that cat in Brazil. But as I said before, like, the tropical zodiac is directional. When the sun is in Leo, it is, here's north, this is south, because the globe has global north and south, Santa's place and the opposite thing, defined by our rotational axis. There is a global east and west. And those, by the way, are the cardinal directions, and they are the cardinal cusps. Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, Aries. Aries is literally, the Pisces-Aries cusp is due east of the center of Earth. And that's why we celebrate holidays like Easter, named for Wester, who's the goddess of the dawn, which happens in the east. And I could go on and on. All right, anyway. So at Leo time, the sun is here. It's cleared the north, it's on its way to the west, and it's northwest of the Earth. And so whether you're in the middle of your summertime, like in Vegas, or it's the middle of your local winter, like in Melbourne, Australia, it's still the sun's in the northwest. And by the way, it rises north of east and it sets north of west in Leo everywhere in the world. All right. So I think we all know what's up with the Leo sun, right? But how does that Leo sun express when Pisces is rising versus when, say, Leo is rising or Libra is rising? And this helps us tune into the seasons of the day. So, you know, here, unless I'm looking at a chart, I can only really play with whole signs. And I know that, for example, when Pisces rises, Virgo is setting. Leo rises before Virgo, Leo reaches before Virgo, Leo rests before Virgo. So from a whole sign point of view, this is the sun in the 6th. A fun game you can play is like this. Why does Leo make Pisces sick? So it's a stupid little question, but Leo is the 6th of Pisces. And there's like pretty easy answers to that one. Pisces is oneness, right? Well, and so it has a pretty hard time with Leo, which is like, I'm the one, you know, on one level. And we want that for you with the Leo sun, but you were born at night. And so the moon is your sect light. And the moon, of course, is down beneath the horizon as well, because Cancer rises before Leo, which rises before Virgo. Cancer sets before Leo, right? So from a whole sign point of view, and I can only do that without knowing more information, if I only get these big three, I know that you are a child of the night, in the middle of the summertime, right? So it's the middle of the summer of the year, but it's like the middle of the autumn of the day, because the sun has set but has not yet reached its roots at the IC, which is like winter solstice of the day. Do you feel me? So that's kind of a cool balancing there. And then I also know that you're born at the very end of the lunation. And how do I know that? Because we have a Cancer moon reflecting Leo light to earthly eyes. It's likely you were born in a Cancer lunation, meaning a Cancer new moon. I mean, it's almost impossible for that to not be true. Sometimes we do get 2 new moons in Leo. It's the old definition of a blue moon, but that's rare. So probably was a Cancer new moon before your birth, and either a Cancer new moon followed by a Capricorn full moon, or a Cancer new moon followed by an Aquarius full moon, and then you. Right? In that balsamic time, again, as I said earlier, like the waning moon was said to be the lunar side of the cycle. She's darkening in light, right? Where the waxing moon, the growing moon, is the solar side of the cycle. So though Leo, and hopefully it's a fit, I would look at your chart, and first of all, when I see a Pisces rudder, which is an old name for the ascendant because of this, I'm like, all right, where's Jupiter at? Because I'm very traditionally inclined in that way. But still, I'm like, all right, you're a child of the night. The moon is your sect light, and there she is, not only dignified because she's at home in Cancer, but she's also in her nightly phase. And in the depths of the night, there's something about that balsamic moon, right? The waning gibbous that is so lunar. All right. Carol, do we have time for one more of those? We're kind of at our 90 minutes here.
Yes, of course. As long as you have the time, we'd love to have you.
I can't shut up. So this is the place, by the way, where we invite you to leave if you're tired. But I know Las Vegas is the city that never sleeps, so I'm going to try to comply. We'll do at least a couple more of these. And I will actually invite y'all, if you wish, on this next one, to unmute yourself, and I'll ask these questions, and if nobody answers them, I'll answer them myself. Oh, but I also said I was going to play a game. So Astro Dice. Amazing. I don't even have my planet die. If y'all don't know about the Astro Dice, they are 3 12-sided die. One of them has the numbers 1 through 12 for the houses. One of them has the planets to Pluto and the north and south nodes. And then one of them has the 12 signs. And they're really amazing divination tools. Like ask a question, roll the dice, and it says, you know, like what Aries, Jupiter in the 11th or something. They're really cool study tools because you can roll them and it says Aries, Jupiter in the 11th, and what the heck does that mean? And they're really great study tools in this way that I want to show you now too, which will help you kind of 12-fold your astrology. So I'll either roll like, and by the way, Etsy's the place to buy Astro Dice. They're just a lot cheaper than you find them anywhere else for some reason I don't know. I like particularly sparkly ones. So I'll just start somewhere. I might start in Gemini because that's what was rising when I was born. I might start at Aries because that's the map we're so familiar with. I might start with Pisces because we were just there. So let's start with Pisces, and then I'll just roll this. And actually, 2 6-sided die that you can just grab from your kid's board game is even better because then you can never roll 1. Because the first of Pisces is Pisces. Like it's not going to give you much, okay? So right now I'm going to roll this 12-sided die, and I get 2. What's the second of Pisces? And of course, the answer is Aries. Now that might like disrupt the matrix because we all learned that the second is Taurus, is Venus, you know, as if like the world stopped spinning. Now there's an important reason for the so-called natural zodiac, as I shared before. The Aries cusp is east of the center of Earth. The tropical signs are like Earth's houses. So there is like an astronomical like essence to that, you know, zodiac that's become so popular in modern astrology. Traditional astrologers learned a Cancer rising chart. Maybe you know that's the Thema Mundi, the chart that Hermes gave us. But anyway, there's 12 different rising signs. So there's 12 different second houses. And the second of Pisces is Aries. This is a really fun thing to do. Like you always get complications between the first and the second. Like why would Pisces have Aries values? It seems to be ridiculous, and that's one of the reasons why the second is said to be an inconjunct. But so now we're in Aries, okay? So everyone knows this. I just rolled the die. What's the fourth of Aries? And the answer is Cancer. And we're really fast with that one because it's the chart we all learned, right? But now we're in Cancer, and I'm going to roll it again. And I got a 4. What's the fourth of Cancer? And the answer is Libra. Like, how do I get there so quickly? I roll the dice a lot. And I know that 4 means square, and squares of cardinal signs is cardinal signs. And I know that Libra follows Cancer in the zodiac. So if Cancer's on the first, the fourth has to be cardinal. And if, and by the way, especially with Cancer rising, that probably isn't going to apply to a quadrant house system. Cancer in the northern hemisphere is likely to have a Pisces midheaven, a Virgo IC. But with the dice, I can only play whole signs, right? So now we're in Cancer. I got 10. That's funny, right? Because, oh no, I'm in Libra, and I got 10. The 10th of Libra is Cancer, just like the 4th of Cancer is Libra. So it just sent us back. And now I get the 8th. What's the 8th of Libra? And so how do we do that? If you don't know right away, if you don't know your quincunxes, well, the 7th of Libra is what? Aries, right? It's that opposition. Back to my heron. Like, here's this dude out doing his thing alone. It's like, where's your partner? She's doing her thing alone. It's like this Libra Aries axis. So if Aries is the 7th, then Taurus is the 8th. Because Taurus will follow Aries. And then you can play this game of like, well, why would Taurus be the death of Libra? And it's because Libra is equal giving and receiving, and Taurus is like a good curriculum for learning how to receive. Right? So we can go on, and then I invite you, if you do play this game, to like stop along the way. So when I was just at like Cancer is the 10th of Libra, why is the Libra design scheduled in such a way to have Cancer work? When Libra is the 4th of Cancer, why does the Cancer path, that's what I call the ascendant, right? Like, why would it like root itself in the Libra mysteries? And then you start just opening into all sorts of strange questions, right? And then natal charts do these kinds of things for us too. So let's go here. Sagittarius sun, Pisces moon, and Virgo rising. Mutable much? By the way, if you want to like refer back to that, that's the second entry here in the chat. So Sagittarius sun, I think we know that one, right? And by the way, we associate Sagittarius with taking these great adventures, right? Well, look, Sagittarius takes us to the southern extreme, which is literally the Tropic of Capricorn. And then Capricorn's like, you have responsibilities, go back. That's what I like to say. So Sagittarius is like on this great adventure. Well, it is also from the Northern Hemisphere point of view. We know this is a Northern Hemisphere birth when the sun is furthest from us. It's not only furthest from us, but it's further getting further versus Capricorn, which is the furthest from us, but coming back. Yeah, and Capricorn remind me to say farthest for distance instead of furthest, which is where I tend to lean anyway. Sagittarius didn't give a shit, and then I said Capricorn. It's like grammar, kid, and probably watch your language too. And you're not allowed to use that I grew up in Vegas excuse because all these people in Las Vegas and they're way more enlightened than you are. But now I'm just sharing my thoughts out loud. Okay, anyway, so Sagittarius sun, and we know we are like wintering. Okay, so maybe it's the last season of fall, and which is, not only because leaves fall from the trees, but the sun is falling in the sky. It actually begins at summer solstice time, right? Very slowly, but come fall, especially Libra, it's happening quite quickly. And then in Sagittarius, that's really slowing down because it's going to then stop, turn around, and slowly, like the goat, start climbing the mountain again. See? So we know this time of the year, like most of us have been seasoned in tropical astrology, especially from the Northern Hemisphere point of view. But let's do this one. Sagittarius sun in Virgo's on the rise. What is the season of the day? So I'm going to let somebody else answer that if you'd like. So I encourage you to just think whole sign houses. Count on your fingers works pretty well too. Sagittarius sun, Virgo rising. Well, I call myself Gemini Brett, so I'm also allowed to answer my own questions. Just go Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. And maybe some people answer that in the chat. Sagittarius is the fourth of Virgo. So here's one who's born in like the dark of the year and the dark of the day. And notice that she showed up with her head in front of a full moon. I mean, unless that's like the sun after an eclipse or something. I don't think it is, because I'm looking at these big three that say she's born in Sagittarius. She's born in the middle of the night. Yeah. And let's do this. So Sagittarius sun, Pisces moon. Is the moon waxing or waning? So Carol, I just felt you're waxing, right? Because when we depart from Sagittarius in the zodiacal order, right, which is the moon-wise order, because the moon does this most quickly, and her smile grows, right? Like Sagittarius, it's not seen at all. And then she gets to Capricorn, you get that little kind of sliver. And then she gets to Aquarius, the Aquarius moon reflecting Sagittarius light. The sextile moon is kind of how we draw the moon shape. And then she gets to that weird square. It's the strangest thing because the moon is such a curvy being, but you can see that unnatural straight line on her face, you know? Oh, it's kind of like that smile, which is a big smile, right? So how does Pisces moon reflect Sagittarius light to my earthly eyes? That becomes my question. And in the tradition, again, that waxing is seen as the solar side of the cycle. So even though the moon is in Pisces, right, and so a watery sign, much more in yin, it's kind of on the yang side of the cycle, which brings some balance. Does everybody who wants to understand more about that get it? Or let's just do some more examples and we'll try to go there. Now, typically what I'll do with a client is, well, I might even like, you know, if I'm in a moment that looks like, I don't know, like this, I might show it to them like this. Right, so we can talk a little bit more about like our feet are on the ground. This is actually a thing, right? It's not just like a bunch of glyphs and weird stuff. But you know, it's nice to just sit like, oh well, in the middle of a long, cold night, with the moon now setting in the west, the stars come to play without competition from the lights, for more truth to call us to seek, right? Something like that. Like I want to get into that moment. And this is something I just really encourage you to practice. Like start with the sun and the rising sign. And you can like picture charts or whatever. They're really good to draw. Like I love to teach sacred geometry. It's a sister science of ours. But if you just put yourself there, it's like, okay, wait, if Virgo's rising, then Sagittarius sun means it's the middle of the night, and Pisces moon means the moon is setting or has just set or is just about to. And then you're like, oh, well, crazy, because that's, the waxing half moon sets in the middle of the night. And you're like, yeah, I get it, you know? And then things just start coming together for you, things that we usually don't consider. Consider, which means, by the way, with the stars. And with the stargazers. All right, so let's do another one here. Taurus sun, Aquarius moon, Libra ascendant. Right, so this beautiful time of the year. I just walked the dog past like a rose bush, like the old school rose bushes, right? That just have a million roses. And now it has like 3, I think. And it smelled like 1,000. I was just like, oh my God, like we're coming into like the Taurus. I was explaining to Koa, or describing to Koa, I should say, this morning, where I feel like Capricorn is the trunk and the roots, and Virgo is the leaf that reaches for the light and does the inner work that feeds the thing, and Taurus is the flower and the fruit, you know? And at least from that northern hemisphere perspective, we really get that flowering, right? That kind of Taurus time, yeah. So that's like how I like to think of Taurus. I try not to lens the archetypes of these signs only through the northern hemisphere seasonal experience. I like to like act locally but think globally, you know. And I know that Taurus is northeast everywhere on Earth, and that does a different thing for me. But anyway, so we have a Taurus sun, but Libra rising. So we were there somehow before, right? With the dice brought us into that. Daniel, you probably had like a little giggle at that time, right? We were looking at what is the 8th of Libra, and the answer is Taurus, because when Libra's rising, Aries sets, and Taurus will follow Aries to rest in the west. And so, yeah, there's that thing. Now, though these signs traditionally, Taurus and Libra, are said to be inconjunct, that's like one of the descriptions of a quincunx. They don't see eye to eye. They share Venus. So an old term was they're lichen girding. And so they're like, from an old school point of view, and I love more of a modern astrological aspect approach. Like I'm a big fan of harmonics, for example, but I like to start old school. Like these are inconjunct things. So your sun is in a bad house. And the reason why is the first is said to be blind to the ways of the 8th. But what do we know about that place? It's like the mysteries. And it's fun, right? Because modern astrology is like very kind of speaks through the Aries rising lens and compares Scorpio in the 8th. And you're like, wait a second, I'm like backwards or reversed for all these things, which is so fun. It's Libra rising. It's like it's a study of partnership. Like, how do you study that? Walk in the other's shoes. Like, see the world through the other's eyes, right? So we want to take the 8th, which people are saying is Scorpio, and flip the script. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we look through the eyes of Scorpio? If we do, we're looking at Taurus. You see what I mean? How do we look through the eyes of Capricorn, which they're telling you is the 10th? Well, it's your 4th, right? You're looking at Cancer up there, like that kind of trip, you know? Anyway, so there's something mysterious here, but what I'll say about like seasonally in the year, this is the middle of the spring, Taurus time, because we know we're talking Northern Hemisphere here. By the seasons of the day, it's like the middle of the summertime, between the height of the light and the kind of autumnal space, which is the sun setting. Do you get that? And now the shadows are long and these great mysteries. So now we're looking at Taurus sun and Aquarius moon. So what do you think, friends? Waxing or waning? And what I'll tell you is if you get fast at that, which is a lot easier to do when you're asking yourself instead of feeling like you're at some class with some teacher pop quizzing you and we're all like, oh shit, like instantly. Like when you get fast at that, the nature of our craft will be so much louder in your heart. And you can get really quick at that, right? I could say, all right, Taurus sun, the Aquarius moon is the waning half moon. Right? So I know it's a half moon because it's the same modality. They're fixed, and fixed is either going to be a conjunction, opposition, or a square, right? And I know that Aquarius is not Taurus, so it's not a conjunction. I know Aquarius is not Scorpio, which is the sign opposite Taurus. They are two sides of one thing. And so we're either at the waxing square or the waning square. And I know that the fixed sign that follows Taurus in the zodiacal order is Leo, right? And so like that's like those things used to be how I would get here, like kind of logically play my way there. Now I've just spent so much time with the sky, you know, anytime I see the moon, like this morning I was looking at the moon, who we know she was full a couple nights ago with the eclipse, right? Like it still looks dang full. Like I can't really tell a difference, frankly. And I'm like, this is how Libra moon reflects Aries light. It's in opposition. Tomorrow, she'll be in Scorpio. And if the clouds let me, and the weatherman says no, I'll get to say like, oh, this is how Scorpio reflects Aries light. And I will just look at the shape of her smile. I'll point an arm to the sun and an arm to the moon. I'll just feel it in my body. Do you know what I'm saying? Like these things just start becoming more tangible, more real. Like you can chew on them. You know, see what I'm saying? So then you get to the point, it doesn't take that long, and there's no rush, where you're like, all right, like an Aquarius moon reflecting Taurus sun, right? This is the waning half. Hawaii, they call it the Olis, right? And then I want to go archetypal with it. Like, I like to think of the moon, the way the moon reflects the sunlight to Earth is like how spirit is reflected through a unique soul to incarnate into matter. And so for me, this Aquarius moon reflecting Taurus sun speaks of your medicine. And if I think of Aquarius, for example, about revolutionary, that's like one of our little keywords that we might use. Right? Well, what is so revolutionary about embodiment and slowing down and learning like the cow to digest with 7 stomachs, you know, and I like that whole trip. Or Aquarius, if we might go community with it, right? Like, what is community of embodied, you know, it looks like ecstatic dance, Aquarius reflecting Taurus. See what I'm saying? Like people are doing some crazy shit and it's all beautiful and embodied and amazing. It looks like a yoga class, but it's like coming into Shavasana, where it's telling me to go take a picture of the sky. But you know, at the same time, like some of those Aquarian things, we might feel kind of 11th house, and this is not a moon in the 11th because Libra's rising. Okay, and Aquarius is the 5th of Libra. Right, how do we get there quickly? It's a trine, and trine goes 159. Right, so now let me play this game. Like, let's do that with Libra. The 9th of Libra is Gemini. The 5th of Libra is Aquarius. You can turn that thing a little bit, by the way. The 9th of Gemini is Aquarius. The 5th of Gemini is Libra. You turn it again. The 9th of Aquarius is Libra. The 5th of Aquarius is Gemini. Right? You just keep turning that thing and you will learn so much. If you consider things like the 9th is said to be university, well, why the heck would Libra go study at Gemini? Because if you're trying to walk the way of partnership and honoring the other, right? So like here's a too personal example. When I share with my partner exactly what I need for us to get along better or for me to feel honored, I need to learn how to speak it in her language. Right? Or it doesn't matter how much I might share my needs or ask her to share her needs. If she shares them and I can't understand what the heck she's saying because I'm me and she's her, it doesn't work. Right? So like the golden rule is dumb. Don't do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do unto others as they would have them done unto them. And the big game in partnership is learning what the fuck that is. Part of my language, but it's like that, right? It's like so frustrating and confusing and all those things. It used to be more when I was with not as deep and open people. But so that's part of like why Gemini is the 9th of the Libra map. Like if you really want to relate, go learn many languages. And that doesn't have to mean English and Spanish and Bulgarian, or you know what I mean? Like literally try to learn how the other sees the world. Yeah. And what is Libra really passionate about? You know, or let's do this one. This is a fun one with Libra because the 5th is birth, creation. Right? Well, what is Libra birth? Somehow it births Aquarius. How does that work? Well, you got married and suddenly you inherited a whole community of people. See what I'm saying? Why is Gemini the 5th of Aquarius? You can just keep doing that. It's a really fun game to play. And that dice game I was speaking about before works there too. And so here we have one born by the day, right? Libra rising, Taurus sun. The sun, therefore, is your sec light, but the moon matters so much. And you get this fifth and eighth thing. It's a very sensual thing, which is a nice, like, nice configuration if you want to learn how to Libra. Because having the moon in the place of passion and the eighth is the place of merging will make sure that you get involved in such a way so that you're not just a hermit on a hill. You see what I'm saying? I'd love to do the rest of these, but I think we should honor that we're about to hit 2 hours.
Yes.
But hopefully, more importantly, y'all feel what I'm doing and you're inclined to go give it a try. Stephen, I see your hands up, and it'll definitely take a little bit of time for questions if y'all would like.
Oh, okay. I promise not to talk too long, but
I wish I could say the same.
Am I to understand then that you really don't look at the traditional houses, but you look at the proportions and the phases, and so, for instance, like the fifth house, officially ruled by Leo and so forth. You just don't look at that at all?
Yeah, well, so that whole fifth house is ruled by Leo is super new in astrology. And I don't look at that. I'm not saying that doesn't mean it's a thing, right? Like, I'm super into pyramids that were built long ago. I also like air conditioning. Do you feel what I'm saying?
Pluto's pretty new.
And so I'm personally at this point in my astrological study and in sharing and teaching, I'm more invested in this idea of planetary joy. I get more excited when I see Venus in the fifth and Sun in the fifth. Even though I have Sun in the fifth, or maybe I don't, because I was born Gemini rising with a Scorpio Sun. So my Sun is in the sixth of the Gemini map. That's like a whole sign framework, right? So let me answer a question you might also be asking or not, but I'll answer it anyway. I use many house systems.
Many.
Yeah. Right now I'm playing with Placidus houses because they reflect the planetary hours. Like, let's say the daylight is 10 hours long, or let me do 8 hours long, right? In the middle of the winter or something. Then the sun is going to take 40 minutes to move through the 12th and 40 minutes through the 11th and like that in a Placidus house system. And so because I'm really kind of tuning more and more into these like seasons of the day, as I'm calling them, the Placidus houses work that really well. I used to always cast porphyry house charts because like I could teach you to learn to see the midheaven in the sky with your eyes, and then also learn not by looking at what's rising, but looking at the southern sky to know what is rising. And so once I get the ascendant in the midheaven, I can trisect that quadrant to get the porphyry houses, right? So it's like the best I could do from my actual experience of the heavens to like create an embodied house system. I like whole sign houses for some of the reasons that we've been playing with today. There's an archetypal fabric to them. This idea of Aquarius is the fifth of Libra. And typically, by the way, Aquarius will be on the fifth cusp for most Libra charts, unless you're born with like very late Libra rising. And the reason why is because zero Libra rises due east. But I was born with Gemini rising, and I have an Aquarius midheaven. My ascendant MC are more trine than they are square. I work with the highest part of my chart, which the midheaven is not. Contrary to very popular teachings, astrologers will teach you the midheaven's above your head. That's wrong. They'll teach you it's the highest part of the ecliptic. That's wrong. The highest part of the ecliptic squares the ascendant. What the midheaven is the point of the ecliptic in this moment that is at the reach. That's at its highest height. But that doesn't make it the highest point of the ecliptic above the ground. And that's too long of a story right now. But let me just share this. We were talking about the meridian before. In a quadrant chart, we really honor the ground, which is probably the best image for the local earth because it's the ground and it's made of earth and stuff, right? And then we have the meridian, right? What is the meridian? It's the great circle that goes through the top of the sky and through the south and the north. And it therefore separates the east, which ups, from the west, which downs. And now if you use the horizon and the meridian, you have quadrants of above the ground going up, that's 12, 11, 10. Above the ground going down, that's 9, 8, 7. Below the ground going down, 6, 5, 4. And below the ground coming up, 3, 2, 1, liftoff, right? And like, I love quadrant charts. They are something that's a reflection of that part of me or you that has his feet on the ground. And so when people are asking me things about, their sick husband, I'm interested in the whole sign chart, which speaks to me a little bit more about why, in their intention as a soul who came to this place to grow, why this would be part of their experience. But I'm really interested in the quadrant chart, which tells me a little bit more about when he's going to get out of the hospital. See what I mean?
Right. Or take your picture.
We say more about that, or take your picture? Oh,
Yeah.
right, that thing. No, the clouds came in anyway, so I was just like, I'll just talk forever instead. Yeah, so I think archetypally, and it's all I can do with Astro Dice anyway. I'm really more and more interested in this. What is the fifth of Taurus kind of thing? What is the eighth of Gemini kind of thing, or whatever, right? And I see my sun in the sixth in that regard. Like, a fun question is, because six is traditionally associated with illness, why would Scorpio make Gemini sick? Gemini doesn't want to go deep. Do you know what I mean? Like, why will Capricorn be the death of Gemini? Why do I ask that? Because Capricorn's the eighth of the Gemini map. Because Gemini doesn't want to get like serious and shit. Like, I have a bunch of emails I can't answer. It's like that thing, right? But it's also where I will be reborn. The Scorpio can be like my sacred work. So in half of the house systems I can push buttons for, I have the sun in the fifth. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And we're having a baby in June, and so we'll see how that activates then too, you know. But I also see that kind of essence of a sixth house sun for me, kind of more in the archetypal design. So hopefully I answered your question and a few that you didn't
You
ask.
did. Thank you. Yeah, it's midnight by me, so I have to go too.
Good
So
night. Hey, let me just say for folks, if you want to do this personally, I have like a short session on my site. It's called a Sun Moon Earth session. So that's geminibrett.com. And I'm currently offering 18% off any reading I do that's purchased before the solar eclipse. 18% for the Saros 18. So if anybody wants to play and take this further, like, hit me up at geminibrett.com, please. It's been a great pleasure to, like, at least virtually through the space waves and through connection of fellow star seekers and stargazers, to reconnect to the desert land where I grew up. So thank you so much, Carol, for inviting me. And I should say, for all of you stargazers, it's been a real treat to be with you in this way. And it's fun for me to do talks where I don't share 1,000 slides. I keep saying at some point I'll call myself Scorpio Brett, and I'll share one slide and just go all the way in deep into its pixels. And I guess today we did a little bit more of that than what I'm typically doing with 1,000 Gemini thought forms. But I guess we got some of that too. So thanks for climbing this tree and its many limbs with me. And I hope you felt some of that trunk, and you will take it a little bit deeper into your own roots.
Thank you so much, Brett. This was absolutely fantastic. And everyone will get a copy of the recording probably later tonight, but I know that many of you are from the East Coast, so you'll get it in the morning when you wake up. So you'll be able to review the recording and go back and review the information. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and we look forward to our next presentation next month in April with Ann Ortley. And then Stephen, you are going to be presenting for us in May. So Stephen is going to be talking about rectifying a chart. So be sure to check your inbox and see what we have coming up. And please feel free to join us anytime. Thank you for joining us. And be sure to click on that link for Brett, for Gemini Brett's .com. And he's got lots of offerings. So make sure that you partake in that.
And
Thank you.
Carol, I am just sending you this PDF right now, so
Lovely.
I won't forget. that talks a little bit more about like building a really simple sundial or even an earth wheel to start getting familiar with the directions, and talks about those postures that I shared earlier and some other practices of working with the directions to meet the night sky.
Great. So everyone's going to get 2 emails, one with the PDF and then one with the recording. Okay. So I'll make sure that you get that. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Happy eclipsing to y'all.
Yes. Many blessings. Bye bye.